"Mama can't breathe, her ribs are broken," cried the native child. Rancher stood against the west. The sun had barely climbed over the wide western sky when the quiet of the land was broken. Morning usually came slowly here. The wind moved first, brushing over dry grass and wooden fences. Birds followed, light and careful. People came last. That was how it had always been. But on this morning, the order changed. A child's voice cut through the open air. It was sharp, frightened, and full of panic. Small feet ran hard across uneven ground, kicking up dust. The child did not stop to look back. Tears blurred their eyes, but they kept running, because stopping felt impossible. "Mama can't breathe," the child cried out again and again. "Her ribs are broken." The words did not fully make sense to the child, only that something was very wrong. Their mother lay inside the small home, struggling for every breath. Each rise of her chest looked painful. Each breath sounded weaker than the one before. The child had tried to help the only way they knew how, calling her name, holding her hand, begging her to stay awake. But fear had taken over, pushing the child outside and toward the only place where help might be found. The land between the homes was wide and unforgiving. There were no close neighbors, no paved roads, no easy answers, just long stretches of dirt, fences, and silence. The child ran anyway, hoping someone would hear. A few people did hear. Some paused in their work and looked up. A man fixing a fence stopped and squinted toward the sound. A woman hanging laundry froze with a sheet in her hands. They recognized the child. Everyone did, and because they recognized the child, they also knew the family. That knowledge made them hesitate. The child belonged to a native family that lived just beyond the edge of what the ranchers considered their world. Not far in distance, but far in how people treated them. For years, unspoken rules had shaped the land as much as fences did. Some people mattered more than others. Some problems were meant to be ignored. The child ran closer now, their voice louder, more desperate. Dust covered their clothes. Their chest heaved as they tried to breathe between cries. Still, no one moved. Some looked away. Some told themselves it was not their place. Others feared trouble, questions, attention, or involvement they did not want. Helping could bring problems. Staying silent felt easier. But not everyone turned away. On the far side of the land, a rancher stood near his horse, preparing for the day. He was not young, and he was not old. His face showed years of sun and wind, and his movements were steady, practiced. He lived alone, worked alone, and spoke little. Most people described him as quiet. Some called him distant. Few knew much about him at all. He heard the child's cry clearly. At first, he did not react. Out here, sounds carry far. Many were harmless. But something in the child's voice made him stop. It was not just fear. It was urgency layered with helplessness, the kind of sound that stayed with a person. The rancher listened again. The words reached him this time, broken by sobs, but unmistakable. A mother. Trouble breathing. Serious injury. He did not look around to see what others were doing. He did not wait for someone else to step forward. He walked toward the child. As the rancher approached, the child stumbled to a stop. For a moment, fear crossed their face. Adults often brought disappointment, but the rancher bent slightly, keeping his voice calm and low. "Show me," he said simply. The child nodded and turned, running again. This time the rancher followed. They moved across the land together, one small and frantic, the other steady and determined. The rancher's boots kicked up dust as he walked fast, eyes fixed ahead. His thoughts raced, but his face stayed calm. Panic would not help anyone. The small home came into view. It was simple, worn by time and weather. The door hung slightly open. The child rushed inside, calling out to their mother. The rancher paused at the doorway for only a second. He knew stepping inside crossed more than a physical line. It crossed an invisible boundary that many people respected without question, but he stepped in anyway. Inside, the air felt heavy. The woman lay still, her face pale, her breathing shallow and uneven. Each breath looked like effort. Her eyes fluttered but did not fully open. The rancher knelt beside her, careful and respectful. He did not touch her right away. He watched her breathing, listened, and measured the moment. Years of living alone had taught him how to stay calm when things went wrong. The child hovered nearby, shaking. "She hurts," the child whispered. "She can't breathe." "I know," the rancher said softly. "You did the right thing." He spoke to the woman next, telling her who he was, telling her help was there now. He kept his voice steady, even though worry settled deep in his chest. The signs were serious. This was not something that could wait. Outside, time kept moving. The sun rose higher. Other ranchers watched from a distance. They saw the rancher enter the home. They exchanged looks but did nothing. Draven followed. The rancher helped as much as he safely could. He made the woman more comfortable, kept her still, and made sure her breathing was not blocked. He knew she needed proper care, and fast. Staying longer without getting help would only make things worse. He turned to the child. "We need to move carefully," he said. "I'm going to get more help." The child nodded, fear and trust mixed together. When the rancher stepped back outside, eyes were on him now. He could feel them. The silence felt heavier than before. He knew what people were thinking. He had grown up around these unspoken rules. He understood the cost of breaking them. Still, he walked to his horse. Someone finally spoke from a distance. A short warning, not meant kindly. A reminder to stay in one's place. The rancher did not answer. He mounted his horse and rode out, dust rising behind him. As he rode, memories surfaced. Moments from his past when he had needed help, and found none. Times when people chose comfort over courage. He had promised himself long ago that if he ever had a choice, he would not look away. Behind him, the child sat beside their mother, holding her hand, listening for each breath. The land outside remained wide and quiet, but something had shifted. A line had been crossed. A decision had been made. The rancher rode across the wide open land, the morning sun warming his back. Dust rose under the horse's hooves, drifting slowly in the soft wind. The landscape stretched endlessly, golden grasses, distant hills, and scattered trees. Out here the land belonged to no one, and everyone at the same time. But the rancher's mind was far from the scenery. He thought only of the mother, her shallow breathing, and the child's desperate voice. He reached the nearest town, a small cluster of buildings with wooden sidewalks, and a few people beginning their daily work. He dismounted quickly and tied his horse. Every movement was calm, but inside a rush of concern pressed hard against his chest. He needed help, someone who could do more than he could. He needed someone who knew how to treat serious injuries. Inside the general store, the clerk looked up as he entered. The rancher spoke quickly, explaining the situation, and the clerk's eyes widened in surprise. He grabbed a small bag of supplies, bandages, clean cloths, and some bottles of medicine. But the rancher shook his head. "Not enough. She needs more than this. I need someone trained, someone who can give proper care." The clerk hesitated, glancing toward the back of the store where others were busy with their own tasks.
"There's the doctor," he said finally, "but he's usually slow to leave the office."
"And he doesn't like getting involved with native families. You know how it is." The rancher didn't argue. He only nodded. He knew exactly how it was. Prejudice and old grudges ran as deep as the rivers and as high as the mountains here. But he had made a choice. He could not turn back now. He could not leave the mother in pain or the child alone with fear. The doctor was a tall man with a stern face and careful eyes. At first, he refused to come. "It's too early," he said. "I have other patients." The rancher did not argue, but he did not leave either. He spoke calmly, firmly, explaining the injuries and the urgency. He did not beg, did not yell, just told the truth as clearly as he could.
Eventually, the doctor agreed to go.
He gathered his tools, and together, he and the rancher returned to the small home. When they arrived, the child ran to meet them, relief and hope shining through tears. The rancher knelt down again, keeping the child close, speaking softly. "It's okay."
"She's going to be okay. Help is here now."
Inside the home, the mother looked weaker but seemed to understand that she was no longer alone. The doctor worked carefully, checking her breathing and watching her chest for movement. He spoke quietly to the rancher, giving instructions. Together they moved slowly, making sure the mother was safe and as comfortable as possible. As the morning passed, neighbors began to notice. Some came closer, out of curiosity. Some whispered to each other. The rancher ignored them, focused only on the mother and the child. He could feel eyes on him, questioning him, judging him. But he did not stop. He had never let the opinions of others guide his actions. Soon, word spread beyond the immediate area. People in the town began talking about what had happened. Some were shocked, some confused, some angry that a rancher had crossed the invisible boundaries of the land, but many also felt a quiet admiration for the man who had stepped forward when others had stayed silent. Back at the home, the child never left their mother's side. Their small hands held her hand gently, brushing her hair back, whispering words of comfort. The mother's eyes opened briefly, focusing on her child. A faint smile passed over her lips, and the child squeezed her hand, feeling hope stir in their heart. The rancher stayed longer than anyone expected. He carried water, adjusted blankets, and kept an eye on the mother's breathing. When she stirred or coughed, he was there to help her sit up gently. When the child grew tired, he spoke softly to them, telling stories of the land, of the wind, of the small wonders that kept him going through hard days. Hours passed slowly, but every moment mattered. The doctor finally nodded, signaling that the mother's condition had stabilized enough to continue care more safely. They discussed options carefully, making a plan to get her to a proper medical facility if needed. The child listened, understanding more than they could say. Outside, the sun climbed higher, the land stretching wide and golden. The rancher finally stepped out to check on his horse, brushing sweat from his forehead. He could feel the weight of the day beginning to press on him. He knew that standing against the expectations of the community would not be easy. People would talk, rumors would spread, and some might even come to challenge him. He didn't care. He had made a choice. He had chosen to act, to help, to stand for what was right. That decision would shape the day, the week, and the way people remembered what had happened. It was more than courage. It was responsibility, and he understood that clearly. As the afternoon light softened, the doctor packed up and left, promising to return the next day to check on the mother. The rancher stayed, keeping watch, helping where he could, and making sure that the child never felt alone. They shared stories, quiet laughs, and moments of hope. The fear that had filled the morning began to fade slightly, replaced by trust. And then the rancher knew he had made more than a difference for one family. He had shown that even in a place where rules were harsh and old grudges ran deep, kindness and courage could still matter. His actions would not be forgotten by the child, the mother, or anyone who had quietly watched from a distance. The land remained wide and still, the wind moving softly across the hills and fences. But something invisible had changed. One person had chosen to stand, and that choice had begun to ripple across the community, quietly challenging the ways things had always been. Even though the day was far from over, the rancher allowed himself a small moment of relief. The mother was safe for now. The child was no longer alone. And the hard work of facing a divided community was only just beginning. But he was ready. He always was. The western sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. Inside the small home, the mother rested. The child whispered softly, and the rancher stood at the doorway, watching the land he loved. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he also knew that courage had a way of finding its own path, one small step at a time. The next day began quietly, but the rancher knew it would not stay that way for long. News of what had happened spread faster than he expected. People in the nearby town whispered as they worked. Some spoke with concern, others with suspicion. The fact that he had stepped in to help the mother and the child was unusual, so unusual that it drew attention he had not sought. The rancher stayed close to the small home, checking on the mother first thing in the morning. Her breathing was steadier, and she could sit up for short periods without too much discomfort. The child watched everything carefully, offering a gentle hand or a soft word whenever the mother seemed tired. Even in moments of quiet, the weight of the previous day lingered. Outside, the community watched, waiting to see what the rancher would do next. Some people thought he had acted foolishly, crossing lines they had believed were unspoken but very real. Others were surprised, seeing a different side of him, someone willing to stand for what was right, even when it made others uncomfortable. The doctor returned that morning carrying more supplies and a careful plan. He explained to the rancher and the child how to help the mother continue healing. The mother listened, weak but understanding, nodding slowly. The doctor's instructions were clear: rest, water, food in small amounts, and careful attention to her breathing. The rancher promised to follow the instructions exactly, knowing that even small mistakes could have consequences. While the doctor worked, the rancher went outside to check his horse. He could feel eyes on him again, and he did not ignore them this time. A few neighbors had come closer, not to help, but to watch. Some whispered to each other, shaking their heads or casting doubtful glances. The rancher ignored their murmurs. He had made a choice, and he knew that what he had done yesterday could not be undone. The tension in the town grew. Some people began questioning why he would care about a native family. Their words were careful, but pointed. Some tried to imply that it was not his place, that he should focus only on his own land and his own business, but the rancher knew better. He understood that helping another human being was never out of place. It was simple: human decency. The child, sensing the tension outside, stayed close to the mother. They asked the rancher questions softly, worried about what people were saying. The rancher knelt beside them, placing a steady hand on the child's shoulder. "Don't worry about what others think," he said. "We are doing what's right. That is all that matters." By midday, the mother could speak in short sentences. Her voice was soft, but each word carried a sense of relief. She thanked the rancher quietly, tears forming in her eyes. The child hugged her gently, feeling hope grow stronger with each moment. It was a small victory, but one that mattered deeply in a world that often seemed unfair. Still, the rancher could sense that not everyone would accept this quietly. He knew the challenges were only beginning. There were people in the town who had long-standing rules about who belonged and who did not. Some of those rules were unfair, even cruel, but breaking them was dangerous in its own way. People would talk. They would try to intimidate. They would look for ways to pressure him to stop helping. He noticed one man in particular watching from across the field. The man was older, respected by many in the community, and he did not like change. His eyes followed every movement, his expression hard and unreadable. The rancher did not look away. He understood the man's power, but he also understood that he could not let fear dictate his actions. Afternoon came slowly. The sun shone bright, casting long shadows across the land. The rancher remained at the home, helping with small tasks, fetching water, adjusting blankets, and keeping an eye on the mother's breathing. The child stayed nearby, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, always alert. Together, they created a small bubble of safety amid the growing tension outside. Later, the doctor returned briefly to check the mother's condition again. He praised the rancher's care, noting that the family had been lucky to have someone act so quickly. The doctor also warned that progress could be slow. Patience would be required, and every day would matter. The rancher listened carefully, nodding. He understood. He had always known that change and healing were not quick processes. Meanwhile, the whispers in town turned into small conversations. Some people began to question their own assumptions. They saw the rancher, a man they thought of as quiet and separate, acting with courage and kindness. Slowly, a few of them approached, offering small gestures of support, perhaps a bucket of clean water, a few extra blankets, or a kind word. It was a start, even if small. The mother's condition improved slightly by evening. She could sit up for longer, drink water without difficulty, and speak a little more. Her face showed the first signs of relief since the incident began. The child's voice was softer now, filled with gratitude instead of panic. They laughed quietly together, a sound that warmed the small home. The rancher stepped outside for a moment to breathe, feeling the evening air against his face. The land stretched wide, quiet except for the rustle of the wind in the grass. For a moment, everything seemed peaceful, but he knew that challenges were still ahead. Standing for what was right often invited opposition, especially in a community set in its ways. He thought about the future. He knew that more decisions would need to be made. He knew that neighbors might try to pressure him, that some people might never understand, and that the family he had helped could face difficulties even after the immediate danger passed. But he also knew that he had chosen a path of courage. That choice, he believed, was stronger than fear. As night fell, the rancher checked on the mother one last time before heading home. She was resting more comfortably now, the child asleep beside her. The small home glowed softly in the lamplight, a safe place in a world that often seemed too harsh. The rancher knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. They had made it through another day. Before leaving, he made a plan. Supplies would be needed. The doctor would need to return. And he would need to be ready for anyone who tried to interfere. He was not afraid, but he was prepared. Courage, after all, required both heart and mind. The rancher rode slowly across the land as darkness fell, thinking about the small victories of the day. He thought about the child's bravery, the mother's resilience, and the quiet support of those who had begun to see things differently. Change was never fast, and acceptance was never easy. But the first steps had been taken, and that was enough to keep hope alive. By the time he reached his own home, the stars were shining brightly over the western sky. The land was silent, except for the distant call of an owl and the whisper of the wind. The rancher felt a deep sense of responsibility, but also a sense of purpose. He knew that tomorrow would be another day of challenges, but he also knew he would face them.
Because sometimes, standing for what is right is not about comfort or safety.
It is about choosing to do the right thing, even when the world is watching, and even when the world may not understand. And that choice, he knew, could make all the difference. The day began with a quiet tension in the air. The rancher woke early, as he always did, hearing the soft sounds of the land. The wind moved across the fields, and the birds were already awake. But there was a feeling different from normal mornings. The previous days had brought hope, but they had also brought attention. People in town were talking, and not all of it was kind. The rancher mounted his horse and rode toward the small home. As he approached, he could see the child outside, looking toward the hills as if expecting something. The mother sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, her face calm but tired. The rancher dismounted and walked up, his steps careful, his eyes alert. "Good morning," he said softly. "How are we today?" The child smiled faintly.
"Better,"
they said. "Mama's breathing is easier." The mother nodded, her hand resting on the child's shoulder. She spoke softly, her voice quiet but steady.
"Thank you," she said, "for everything."
"We're just making sure you're safe." As he worked alongside the mother and child, he noticed movement in the distance. Figures appeared along the horizon. Neighbors, not all of them friendly, watching from afar. Some were curious, some were judgmental, and some were clearly upset that the rancher had taken action. He could sense their whispers carried across the wind, sharp enough to prick at his awareness. The rancher ignored most of it. He had learned long ago that people often judged before they understood. Standing still and letting fear control you never solved anything.
He focused on the family, bringing water, checking blankets, and adjusting the mother's position.
Each small action mattered. Each small act of care was part of the path to recovery. By late morning, more neighbors had gathered. Not all were hostile, though many were cautious. Some approached slowly, offering small gestures, a basket of food, a jar of milk, a soft word. Others lingered at the edges, arms crossed, eyes suspicious. The rancher acknowledged them politely but kept his focus on the mother and child. He understood that change was slow, and patience was part of the process. The child watched the interactions carefully, learning by observation. The rancher had never acted out of fear or expectation of reward. He had simply done what was right. That lesson, though unspoken, settled in the child's mind. It was stronger than any words could have been. The morning passed with a careful rhythm. The mother could sit up longer, eat small amounts of food, and even speak a little. Her voice was weak but determined, a sign of resilience that the rancher admired quietly. He encouraged her, offering gentle praise and reassurance. Each time she managed to step forward, the child's face lit up with hope. As the sun climbed higher, a few people from town stepped closer. They asked questions, some politely, some with a subtle edge of suspicion. "Why are you helping them?" one man asked. "It's not your concern." The rancher looked him in the eye, calm but firm. "Every life matters," he said simply. "Helping someone in need is always our concern." The man said nothing more, but his expression did not soften. The rancher knew it would take time for people like him to understand. Changing hearts was slower than tending a field, slower than waiting for the rain. But he also knew that standing firm was the only way to begin that change. By afternoon, the doctor returned again, bringing more supplies and checking the mother carefully. He praised the rancher for his consistent care and warned him that the healing process would take time. Patience and careful attention were critical. The rancher listened attentively, taking notes in his mind, preparing to guide the family through the next stages of recovery. The child stayed close, asking quiet questions about what was happening. The rancher explained gently, teaching them about small ways to help, how to fetch water without spilling, how to watch carefully for signs of discomfort. The child learned quickly, their confidence growing with each passing hour. Even as the day passed peacefully, the rancher could feel the tension lingering beyond the home. There were people watching, waiting for a chance to intervene or criticize. He could sense the judgments, the whispers, and the unspoken warnings. But he did not flinch. Courage, he knew, was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite fear.
Late in the afternoon, a small group of neighbors approached more closely.
They spoke softly, asking if the family needed anything. The rancher nodded and accepted their help cautiously, recognizing that small alliances could be important. Together, they carried water, adjusted blankets, and offered small comforts to the mother. The child observed, learning again that kindness could come from unexpected places. Some neighbors were cautious, some hesitant, but they were beginning to act. The rancher allowed a quiet satisfaction to settle in his chest. Progress, even small, was still progress. As evening approached, the wind shifted. Clouds moved slowly across the sky, casting long shadows over the land. The rancher paused, looking out toward the horizon. He knew challenges were not over. People who resisted change would still watch, still question, still try to assert their influence. But he also knew that courage and determination had already begun to make a difference. The mother rested quietly, her breathing steady, her hand holding the child's. The child leaned close, whispering soft words of comfort. The rancher adjusted blankets one last time, making sure everything was in place. He felt a quiet pride, knowing that his choice to act had created safety where there had been fear. As darkness fell, the rancher stayed near the home. Stars appeared one by one in the wide western sky, and the wind carried the faint sounds of the town in the distance. He remained vigilant, aware that the night could bring new challenges, but confident that the family was safer than they had been yesterday. He thought about the future. The mother still needed care. The child still needed reassurance, and the community still needed time to adjust. But he also knew that every small act of courage, every quiet moment of care, was a step forward. Before leaving for the evening, he made a plan for the next day: supplies, visits from the doctor, and careful attention to both the mother and child. He understood that responsibility was not just for a moment, but for as long as they needed him. And he was ready to stay that course. The wind moved across the open fields, gentle but persistent. The rancher felt the weight of the day, but also a sense of purpose. Courage was not easy. Kindness was not always welcomed. But standing for what was right, even when it was difficult, could change lives in ways that would last far longer than a single day. He looked at the mother and child one last time before leaving. They were safe for now, and he had done everything he could. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, and perhaps new resistance. But he knew he would face it all with the same calm determination. As he rode back toward his own home, the land stretched wide under the evening sky, golden and quiet. The stars grew brighter, and the wind whispered through the grasses. For the rancher, each small step of courage, each moment of care, was a reminder that one person could make a difference. And that difference, though often unseen at first, could grow stronger every day. By the time he reached his own small cabin, the night had settled fully over the land. The world was quiet now, but the rancher knew that tomorrow would bring both hope and challenge, and he was ready for it. He had chosen to act, to help, and to stand for what was right, and that choice would carry him through whatever came next. Morning arrived slowly over the wide western land. The sun's first rays touched the hills and fields, painting the grass in shades of gold. The rancher rose early, as he always did, feeling the familiar calm of the land. But today was different. Today would bring more than simple chores. It would bring a sense of closure, a chance to see how far courage and care could reach. The rancher saddled his horse and rode toward the small home where the mother and child lived. As he approached, he could see movement in the yard. The mother sat outside, wrapped in a blanket, her posture stronger than the day before. The child ran toward him, their small steps quick, eyes bright with relief and trust.
"Good morning," the rancher said, his voice calm and steady.
"Good morning," the child replied, a smile breaking through the last traces of fear. The mother rose slowly and waved, her face showing gratitude and hope. The rancher dismounted and walked toward them, carrying a small bag of supplies the doctor had left for the day. Water, blankets, food, and some herbal remedies were carefully packed, enough to make sure she would stay comfortable until the next visit. The morning passed with careful attention to small tasks. The mother could sit for longer, drink water more easily, and even eat small portions of food without discomfort. The child stayed close, watching every movement, learning how care and patience worked hand in hand. The rancher guided them gently, showing them small ways to make life easier and safer. As the day went on, neighbors from the town began to approach more openly. Some came hesitantly, offering supplies or simple words of support. Others lingered at the edges, unsure how to act or what to say. The rancher welcomed those who came with kindness and understanding, knowing that even small gestures mattered. Slowly, the invisible walls of division began to weaken. People who had once judged or ignored were beginning to see that courage and kindness were stronger than fear. By midday, the mother was able to move a little on her own. The rancher helped her sit in a chair on the porch, adjusting blankets and pillows to make her comfortable. The child stayed nearby, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement. Every smile, every small sign of progress felt like a victory. It was a quiet triumph, but a powerful one. The doctor returned again, checking the mother carefully. He praised her progress and the rancher's consistent care, noting that recovery was going smoothly thanks to their patience and attention. The mother thanked him quietly, her voice soft but full of warmth. The child watched closely, absorbing every word, every gesture. These moments would shape their understanding of courage and care for years to come. As afternoon approached, the rancher noticed people gathering at the edges of the property. They were neighbors and townspeople who had come to see the progress, some curious, some skeptical, and some genuinely interested. The rancher did not speak harshly to anyone. Instead, he continued to focus on the family, showing through action what it meant to help someone in need. The presence of others could have been intimidating, but the rancher remained calm. He understood that change often arrives slowly and quietly. Some people needed time to see what was right before they accepted it themselves. The rancher's patience, combined with his steady action, was beginning to break through old assumptions and prejudices. Late in the afternoon, the mother was able to sit up fully without assistance. Her breathing was steady, and her face showed signs of strength returning. The child clapped softly, filled with joy and relief. The ranchers smiled quietly, sharing in their happiness, knowing that each step forward was a testament to their resilience. The community watched quietly. Some people whispered among themselves, slowly realizing that the family's safety and recovery had not come at the expense of others, but through compassion and courage. Even those who had been most skeptical could not ignore the progress. Change, they saw, was possible, even in a land where rules and divisions had long seemed fixed. As evening approached, the rancher helped the mother inside to rest, ensuring that she was comfortable and had everything she needed. The child stayed close, reading quietly from a small book, whispering soft words to keep her company. The rancher stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the cool evening air. The wind carried the faint sounds of the town in the distance, but here, in this small home, peace had begun to settle. The rancher thought about the days that had passed, the fear, the uncertainty, the challenges, and the small victories. Each step had required courage. Each moment had demanded patience, but the outcome showed that standing for what was right, even when it was difficult, could make a lasting difference. He knew that the mother and child were not only safe, but stronger than before. They had survived a frightening time, and now they had hope. The child had learned lessons about courage, kindness, and resilience that would stay with them forever. The mother had regained strength, and the support of those who had begun to understand the importance of helping one another. The rancher mounted his horse as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The land stretched wide and silent, the wind rustling gently through the grass. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his actions had mattered. Courage, care, and patience had changed lives. Even when others had doubted or resisted, standing firm had made the difference. As darkness settled over the land, the rancher looked toward the small home one last time. The mother rested, the child slept peacefully, and the small community had begun to shift toward understanding. The rancher felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment, knowing that his choice to act had created hope where there had been fear. In the days that followed, the mother's health continued to improve. The child grew more confident, learning from the rancher's example. Neighbors began to offer more support, slowly building a network of care that stretched beyond fear and division. The rancher continued to guide and protect, his presence a reminder that kindness and courage could stand firm even in the most challenging times. The story of those days spread quietly, a reminder to others that even one person could make a difference. It was not a story of grand gestures, but of simple, consistent action. Helping someone in need, standing for what is right, and refusing to turn away. These were the moments that changed lives and shaped communities. And as the rancher rode across the land, the wind carrying the scent of grass and earth, he knew that the lessons of courage and care would live on. In the child and the mother, and even in the hearts of those who had watched from the edges, a small seed had been planted, a belief that doing what is right matters, and that even in a wide and challenging world, kindness could be stronger than fear. The western sky darkened, stars appearing one by one, casting a gentle light over the land. The rancher rode slowly, thinking about the days that had passed, the choices that had been made, and the lives that had been touched. He knew challenges would come again, as they always did, but he also knew that standing for what is right, even when it was difficult, would always be worth it. And so, under the vast sky of the west, the rancher rode home, carrying the quiet satisfaction of a task completed, a life protected, and hope restored. The mother and child rested safely, the land was calm, and a small but powerful story of courage and kindness had unfolded, one that would be remembered in the hearts of those who had witnessed it, and in the lessons it had left behind.